So what if the absolute worst way to advance your career in 2026 is actually networking?
Right, which sounds totally backward.
It really does. I mean, today we are looking at a blueprint that argues building this massive, 5,000 person connection list online is actually making you professionally weaker.
Yeah, it's a completely counterintuitive premise,
Hmm.
especially when, we're constantly told that visibility is the ultimate career currency. But there's this growing realization that accumulating all these superficial connections, it actively dilutes the kind of deep functional support professionals actually need to survive in high-stakes industries.
Exactly. And that brings us to the focus of today's deep dive. We are unpacking a newly announced model for professional growth called the BYU MS1 Asia Young Professional Career Groups.
Which is a bit of a mouthful, but a really fascinating concept.
Yeah, we're working from an in-depth announcement and article written by Anita L. Hummel, and she's the president of the BYU Management Society's Asia region. So our mission here today is to basically reverse engineer this initiative. We want to figure out the architectural blueprint of these groups so you, the listener, can understand how to seek out or maybe even build a community that gives you actual leverage and support instead of just, an inbox full of automated connection requests.
What's fascinating here is that the BYU Management Society isn't pitching a new software or like a new networking hack.
No, not at all.
Right. They're proposing a structural return to how humans naturally build trust. The source outlines this major pivot away from formal networking and toward a concept they call organic mentorship and peer support.
Organic mentorship.
Exactly.
Huh?
It's a highly deliberate framework designed for young professionals who are navigating these rapidly transforming economies.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Because if we trace this back to its origins, the article notes that this One Asia initiative didn't just emerge in a vacuum.
Right, it has roots.
Yeah, it was directly inspired by a model already proven by BYU MS England. And the data from those Indian chapters showed that when professionals are grouped using a very specific methodology, they don't just stay current in their fields, they actually forge these highly resilient long-term relationships.
And the cornerstone of that success, according to the text, is this exact idea of organic mentoring.
Right, which they explicitly contrast with formal mentorship programs. So let's test that logic. I mean, formal mentoring is the corporate standard, right?
Right.
HR assigns a junior employee to a senior VP. They meet maybe once a quarter, and wisdom is theoretically passed down.
Theoretically being the operative word there.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a high-pressure corporate blind date.
Yeah.
So why is the source arguing that this standard model is fundamentally flawed?
Well, it really comes down to power dynamics
Yeah,
and the psychological concept of vulnerability loops.
vulnerability.
Yeah. In a formal, assigned mentorship, the dynamic is inherently hierarchical. You have a junior person trying to impress a senior person, and that senior person might have direct influence over their career trajectory or their salary.
Right, so the stakes are super high.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Because of that power imbalance, the junior person is highly unlikely to admit their real daily struggles. I mean, they aren't going to sit down with a VP and say, I completely botched a client call yesterday and I have zero idea how to fix it.
No, of course not. They want to appear competent. They want to look like they have it all together.
Right. But human trust is built through vulnerability loops,
Mhm.
which is the mutual sharing of challenges and then the collaborative solving of those challenges.
Which means the formal mentor relationship often just devolves into this really superficial status update.
Yeah, pretty much.
The junior person performs competence, the senior person gives, I don't know, generic career advice, and neither of them actually solves the immediate problems at hand.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source argues for organic mentoring because it strips away that artificial hierarchy.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Organic mentorship happens when relationships form naturally around a mutual shared challenge or interest. It's more like joining a neighborhood hobby club. You aren't sitting across from an executive trying to impress them. You're sitting next to a peer looking at the exact same problem.
And the advice that flows from that dynamic is actually actionable, right? Because it's rooted in the reality of the work, not some theoretical career ladder.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
support systems are just far more resilient during professional challenges when they form that way.
Okay, so I want to dig into the logistics of how you actually manufacture an environment where that kind of organic mentoring happens. Because it almost sounds like a paradox, right? To deliberately engineer something organic.
It does sound like a contradiction, yeah.
But the text provides the structural rules for these career groups. First, they are strictly interest-based. They list very specific fields.
Hmm.
Things like virtual bookkeeping, artificial intelligence, finance, marketing, and virtual assistants.
Okay, so very niche.
Yeah, super niche. But the second rule is one I really want to push back on. The groups are strictly capped at 20 to 30 members.
Just 20 to 30.
Yes. And I mean, I get the desire for intimacy, but practically speaking, if I'm a young professional looking for a job or a major client, 20 people is a tiny sample size. Wait, in the age of massive online networks with thousands of connections, why intentionally limit a networking group to just 20 to 30 people? Isn't the whole point to cast a wide net?
It's a really vital question because it challenges the core assumption of modern networking. We've been trained to believe that opportunity is strictly a numbers game.
Right, more connections equals more opportunities.
That's the myth. But when you look at the sociology behind it, particularly concepts like Dunbar's number, you see that human beings actually have a hard cognitive limit to the number of stable social relationships they can maintain.
Which is around, what, 150 or so?
Right. So when a network grows beyond a certain point, say, into the hundreds of thousands, the trust density of that group absolutely plummets.
Trust density. I like that phrase.
Yeah, the text suggests that limiting the size is a feature, not a bug.
Hmm.
Because when a group gets too big, it just becomes a broadcast channel. Individuals hide in the crowd, and the interactions become completely performative.
So a LinkedIn feed with 5,000 people is basically just a broadcast channel. You are performing for an audience, not actually asking for help.
Exactly. You're curating an image. But by strictly capping the group at 20 to 30 people, you force a really high level of trust density.
Because there's nowhere to hide.
Exactly. In a group that size, you learn everyone's name, you learn their communication style, and you know their specific expertise. The psychology of small, intimate settings creates an environment of actual psychological safety.
That makes total sense. I mean, if you are a virtual assistant struggling to integrate some new software tool, you're not going to post that vulnerability to a massive public forum.
No, you look incompetent.
Right. But you will bring it up to 25 trusted peers who do the exact same work and probably have the exact same problem.
And regarding your point about career mobility, the reality is that career opportunities don't come from strangers glancing at a resume. They come from trusted peers who are willing to actually vouch for your competence.
Yeah. 20 people who deeply trust you will probably generate far more high-quality opportunities than 2,000 people who just vaguely recognize your profile picture.
That's the entire logic behind the cap. It fundamentally changes the definition of a network from just a list of contacts to a functional, collaborative support system.
Okay, the text also mentions the cadence of these groups. They aim to meet virtually every month or every other month, with the possibility of in-person gatherings down the line.
That seems manageable.
It does, but here is the mechanism I find most curious. These groups are entirely member-led.
Wait, really? No official leader?
Nope. There is no top-down syllabus. A peer just steps up to coordinate the meetings. But if the goal is professional development, wouldn't it be more efficient to have an established industry expert running the group to ensure the information is actually accurate and valuable?
You'd think so, but efficiency isn't the primary goal here. Accountability and ownership are.
How so?
Well, when an authority figure runs a group, the members naturally become passive consumers of information. They just sit back, listen, and wait to be taught.
Like being back in a college lecture.
Exactly. But the text emphasizes that these groups are member-led because peer accountability creates a vastly different behavioral response. When a peer is volunteering their own time to organize a meeting, the rest of the group feels a social obligation to actively participate and contribute.
So it transforms the members from a passive audience into active co-creators of the community's value.
Right. And if they really do need outside expertise, the structure allows the group to invite tailored guest speakers.
Oh, that's smart. So if the AI group decides they are collectively struggling with a specific large language model, they can just invite an industry expert specifically for that topic, extract the value, and then return to their peer dynamic.
Yes, the expertise is pulled in on demand, rather than being imposed from the top down. Furthermore, the member-led structure serves a really vital secondary purpose. It acts as a low-stakes laboratory for leadership.
A laboratory for leadership. I love that.
Yeah, a young professional can volunteer to lead their 25-person cohort, practice organizing the group, facilitate complex discussions, and handle logistical challenges. And they do it all in an environment where failure doesn't cost them their job.
That's a huge benefit. But I'm wondering about the scale. If the necessity of intimacy requires capping these groups at 30 people, how does a massive organization scale this across an entire region without breaking that intimate feel?
That's where the rollout strategy comes in.
Right, because the article details the geographic rollout, and it's quite specific. The very first groups are launching in the Philippines in 2026, and they're being spearheaded by a dynamic local leadership team. That's Chet Harmer, Elder Dondi Rolora, and Philip Tan.
Okay, so a strong local foundation.
Yes, but the mandate is that these groups are radically inclusive geographically. Despite the physical launchpad being in the Philippines, anyone in Asia is allowed and encouraged to join any group.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the architecture becomes highly sophisticated.
It's basically like a tech company rolling out a beta test in one region, right? But with the immediate capability to plug in users from across an entire continent.
Exactly. They are anchoring the initiative with a dedicated leadership team in the Philippines to ensure the operational mechanics are solid, like the formation of the groups and the training of the peer leaders. But by immediately opening the borders to the entire Asian region, they are utilizing a mechanism similar to cross-pollination in agriculture.
Okay, walk me through that. How does cross-pollination work in a professional networking group?
Well, think about it. If you restrict a network to a single physical city, say, only virtual assistants living in Manila of the group runs the risk of becoming a massive echo chamber.
Because they all have the same background?
Yeah, they're all subjected to the exact same local economic pressures, the same local labor laws, and the same regional trends. Their problem-solving toolkit becomes totally limited by their geography.
Ah,
But in a Pan-Asian model, you drop a digital marketer from Tokyo, an AI developer from Hanoi, and a finance specialist from Seoul into that exact same 25-person cohort.
so they are united by the core topic, like AI or marketing, but their environmental variables are completely different.
Precisely. And that introduces productive friction.
Reductive friction.
Yeah. The marketer in Tokyo might solve a client acquisition problem using a method that the professional in Manila has never even been exposed to, just because it's completely foreign to the Philippine market.
That is wild.
That cross-cultural exposure dramatically accelerates innovation within the small group. You maintain the high trust density of 25 people, but you inject the diverse intellectual capital of an entire continent.
That's brilliant. And honestly, that localized reality combined with the regional scope is perfectly mirrored in the author of the text herself.
Oh, Anita Hummel.
Yeah. Anita L. Hummel is the president of the BYU Management Society's Asia region, but she isn't operating out of some sanitized corporate headquarters in a Western financial capital.
Right. Where is she based?
The text points out that she is actually based in Hanoi, Vietnam, and it specifically mentions that she actively spends her time biking, swimming, and exploring the chaotic, bustling streets on her motorcycle.
I love that detail. And honestly, that detail in the source material is highly intentional.
You think so?
Absolutely. It serves as a signaling mechanism to the reader. It communicates that the leadership of this initiative is grounded in the actual physical reality of the region they are serving. Building a resilient professional community requires leaders who are engaged with the friction and energy of their environment, not insulated from it.
Which naturally leads us to the ultimate motivation behind this entire blueprint. We understand the mechanics now, the small groups, the peer-led accountability, the cross-cultural pollination.
Right, the nuts and bolts.
But what is the core philosophy driving the BYU Management Society to build this in the first place? I mean, the text is very clear that their primary mission is not just standard business networking or, maximizing corporate profit margins.
No, it's something much deeper.
Yeah, their explicit overarching goal is to cultivate moral and ethical leadership globally. And they hinge this entire initiative on the concept of servant leadership.
Servant leadership, that's a powerful term.
It is. The text defines servant leaders as individuals who lead with profound purpose. Instead of building authority through fear or positional power, a servant leader builds influence through empathy, active listening, caring, and a deep understanding of their team's needs.
And these career groups are essentially designed to be the training ground for those specific traits.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate here for a second. Because For the listener's benefit, we are talking about industries that are notoriously unforgiving. Let's look at artificial intelligence development or high finance.
Very high-pressure environments.
Extremely. These are arenas driven by intense shareholder pressure, cutthroat competition, and the absolute necessity for speed. If you are operating in a market that rewards ruthlessness, doesn't adopting a philosophy centered on empathy and caring actually put you at a severe tactical disadvantage?
It's a fair question.
I mean, if your competitor is willing to completely burn out their team to launch a product a month early, and you are sitting there focused on active listening, won't you just lose your market share?
This raises an important question, and it's a valid challenge. But it highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of how business velocity actually works over a sustained period.
Okay, explain that.
People often confuse dictatorial leadership with actual efficiency. It is entirely true that fear and ruthlessness can produce short-term speed. I mean, you can absolutely force a team to work 80-hour weeks to hit a single, isolated deadline.
Right, we see that all the time in tech.
But the friction that generates the massive burnout, the high turnover, and a toxic culture of hiding mistakes just to avoid punishment that eventually destroys the organization's capacity to innovate.
Because the moment a highly skilled AI developer feels they are just a disposable asset, they will just take their talents to a competitor.
Exactly. They have options.
Yeah.
Servant leadership is not about lowering your standards or sacrificing speed. It is about building sustainable leverage.
Sustainable leverage.
Yes. The text focuses heavily on the word influence. When a leader consistently demonstrates empathy and actually listens to the operational roadblocks their team faces, they build an immense reservoir of trust.
And trust is valuable.
In complex, fast-moving industries, trust is the ultimate currency. If a major crisis hits, a team led by a servant leader doesn't fracture. They communicate openly, they solve problems collaboratively, and they move with incredible cohesion because they know their leader is actually invested in their long-term survival.
So the argument is that empathy reduces internal friction, and reduced friction ultimately leads to greater long-term speed and resilience.
That's exactly it. By practicing this in the career groups, by learning how to actively listen to a peer's struggles in a small, secure environment, these young professionals are actually training to be more resilient and effective operators.
They are learning that the most effective way to lead a team through a really complex challenge is to first understand the actual people facing the challenge.
And that cohesive, inspired team will systematically outmaneuver a fractured, fear-driven team over any meaningful timeline. That is the ethical foundation the BYU Management Society is attempting to scale across Asia.
So what does this all mean? Synthesizing everything we've extracted from this blueprint, what is the actionable takeaway for you, the listener?
It's a big shift in mindset.
It really is. The primary shift is recognizing that the era of the passive, massive network is ending. True professional resilience requires you to seek out, or maybe even build, environments with high trust density.
Those small, specific groups where vulnerability loops can actually form.
Exactly. It requires taking real ownership of your community rather than just waiting for some corporate mentor to magically save you. And fundamentally, it requires a commitment to the mechanics of servant leadership as a tool for sustainable influence, rather than just relying on these shallow transactional interactions.
It is a rigorous, deeply human approach to professional development that really acknowledges the complexities of the modern economy.
Absolutely. And we want to ensure we pass along the direct call to action included in the source material today. If you are a young professional currently in Asia, the door to this initiative is open right now.
They're looking for people.
Yes, the text invites you to reach out, to indicate your interest, join a specialized group, and participate in these virtual meetings. And more importantly, they are actively looking for individuals who are willing to volunteer as peer leaders to help shape the program's foundation.
Which, as we discussed, is an incredible leadership laboratory.
Exactly. You can connect with Chet Harmer, Elder Dondi Rolora, Philip Tan, or your local BYU MS chapter leader to get involved and share your ideas.
To close out our analysis today, I want to leave you with a thought regarding the broader macro implications of this model.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have spent a lot of time discussing how these intimate 20 to 30-person cohorts benefit the individual professional. But consider the macro effect. Asia is currently one of the most dynamic, rapidly expanding economic engines on the planet.
That's undeniable.
So what happens if an entire generation of rising professionals across that continent is systematically trained through these peer groups to view empathy, active listening, and peer accountability as the default settings for business?
Wow.
How does that fundamentally alter the baseline behavior of the industries they eventually control. What would your industry look like if your biggest competitors were also trained to be servant leaders? It is entirely possible that the localized act of joining a small virtual group today will be the catalyst that fundamentally reshapes the expectations of corporate culture in your specific industry a decade from now.
That is a fascinating perspective. It certainly makes you evaluate where you are actually spending your professional energy because building a massive online contact list might give you the illusion of progress, but real influence seems to require a much smaller room and a much deeper commitment. That is definitely a dynamic worth exploring in your own career.